Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit and welcome to this episode. In this episode, I will be sharing the contemplations for the week of April 3rd, 2023, and my invitation is for you to listen inwards and allow yourself to observe, to feel into whatever is coming up for you, and to trust that whatever is coming up is exactly what you're supposed to be working on. So here's an overview of the coming week. On Monday the 3rd, Mercury will be entering Taurus, and then it will be squaring Pluto in Aquarius. On Wednesday the 5th, Mercury in Taurus will be sextiling Saturn in Pisces. Thursday the 6th, Mercury will be conjoining the North Node in Taurus. And then we will also have a full moon in Libra. So the Sun in Aries will be conjoining Chiron during this full moon. And then on Friday the 7th, Venus in Taurus will be sextiling Neptune in Pisces. And on Saturday, Mercury in Taurus will be sextiling Mars in Cancer. So as you can see, if any of you are pattern-seeking humans, I think the most interesting thing for this coming week is that Mercury is going to be aspecting a bunch of planets, specifically the ones that have been kind of experiencing massive shifts in the past few weeks, namely Pluto, Mars, the nodes, and Saturn. So one way to consider Mercury is the connector, right? Mercury is the translator. Mercury is the psychopomp that is able to move between worlds. And so with Mercury being in Taurus, a fixed earth sign, an analogy that I've been thinking for this particular Mercury is that this is the Mercury that's playing the role of the fascia in the body, right? The fascia is the interconnected web, right? It's the traffic that carries the subtle information across the lived web of our experience, right? The fascia is that which we don't always care to track because they're not necessarily localized, but rather connective and hence dispersed, right? So Mercury also rules words, communications, mental processes, and ways of looking at the world. And I think it's interesting to be thinking about Mercury creating a lot of aspects to other configurations, to other planets that are already present and already are major players in the astrology, right, that we've been living in the past few weeks. So when planets are making a lot of aspects, one way to think about their role is that they're kind of maybe entering a party that's already been going on, right? So in this case, Saturn has shifted into Pisces a few weeks ago. Pluto shifted into Aquarius. Mars shifted into Cancer, right? And so all of this has been going on in the backdrop, and then Mercury is kind of entering the party, right? And their arrival, their presence is highlighting or shifting or redirecting or confusing the dynamics that are already present prior to their arrival. Another way to think about it is if you listen to a song maybe, and then a new instrument is making an appearance, or a new instrument is entering the mix right in the middle of a song without maybe having been there before. I'm thinking about how in a lot of songs there are guitar or saxophone solos in the middle, and how it can bring out certain qualities, maybe in the harmony or in the melody, that really wasn't so obvious before, but has always been present, right? Like a solo guitar playing the same melody that the singer has been singing for the whole song is going to shift our perception of that melody, right? Because it's a new instrument. So, planets that are coming into configurations that are already present, that are then highlighting through aspects these relationships, right, can either help bring their influences, right, to the configuration in a way that's clarifying, or they can actually add to the noise that this transit was already creating. So with Mercury, I think there can be a lot of potential for creating new connections and finding words to describe what we've been experiencing. In either case, whatever this is bringing up is probably worth taking a look at. Whatever these configurations are going to bring up is probably ultimately helpful in highlighting what these transits are here to teach us, right? And some of them are here for quite a while, specifically thinking about Pluto in Aquarius as well as Saturn in Pisces, right? They can also provide a welcome distraction, especially if the past few weeks have been really intense, right? Thinking about Mercury as the trickster, Mercury as the comic, right? Mercury can provide some level of relief to the storyline. So if any of you have ever studied Shakespeare's tragedies or comedies, right, you may know that in the middle of particularly intense plotline, there are often comic reliefs, right? So Mercury coming into these configurations may kind of feel like that. On a very practical level, this may look like vocalizing, verbalizing the overarching forces that we've been experiencing and that we've been living out in the past few weeks, right? So if you listen to the contemplation from last week that I shared in the podcast, I was talking a little bit about the importance of digesting our experiences, what we've been moving through. And I feel like this week, with Mercury kind of entering into this configuration, what we might be experiencing is that there's even more potential for digesting. But if digestion were happening more on a body level, on a lunar level last week, this week I think the digestion may be happening more on a verbal level, on a mental level, right? And this is not necessarily better or worse. It's just different, right? When we're processing through the mind, when we're processing through the words or through some sort of language, it can be really interesting to see the difference between that and just kind of processing more silently, right? Mercury in Taurus is making me think about how different situations or different places or different relationships can bring up different expressions within us, right? It's making me consider how many of us change our speech ever so slightly when we're talking to different people. Even if you consider yourself to be a very solid, a very fixed person, you probably sound a little different talking to your boss, say, versus talking to your dog, right? Or talking to a baby. Like, this is just a pretty ridiculous example, but still, right? Like, we have an innate awareness as human beings to the other person or the other being that we're talking to, and we adjust the ways that we express ourselves ever so slightly in order to be able to relate, right? So Mercury in Taurus, I think, is a wonderful opportunity to dilate our awareness to the range of expressions that we hold within us, right? Especially in relation to our surroundings and in relation to how we feel physically, right? An example that I'm thinking about that many of you can probably relate to is how differently one expresses oneself when one is hungry versus when one is satiated, right? Or when one is having or moving through some sort of digestive issues versus when one's digestive system is functioning as desired, right? Like when I am hangry, I don't have as much patience as when I am kind of moving through the world with my belly full, right? So, yeah, so that's the week energetically in a nutshell. And here are some invitations and contemplations that I would like to share with you based on the energy of the week, right? My invitation for you is to notice the words that you are using to describe things, right? Notice which vocabularies have become your default perspectives, philosophies, and worldviews, right? That are underlying those words that you're using. Notice which of these perspectives and philosophies and worldviews are no longer true. Which ones were maybe never yours to begin with in the first place? Which ones are up for like a revision, right? Or an updating at this moment? Mercury transits are always very helpful in my experience to clarify things and to clarify where we stand on things and how we feel about things. It's important to consider that clarity doesn't always look linear, right? Clarity is not always comforting. Clarity is not always clear immediately, right? Sometimes clarity is that which comes or arrives after confusions or conflicts or detours, right? With Mercury sextile to Saturn in Pisces, you can consider, how are your words helping you shape your dreams? How are your words playing a role in obscuring the realness of your dreams, right? Sometimes we use our words or we use our communications to invalidate our own dreams and invalidate our own experiences of things that we desire on such a deep level, right? Our awareness of the kind of collective transmission, right, that wants to come through. I was actually reading, some of you may know if you've been listening to the contemplations that I've been reading Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. And one of the things that he talks about in that book is how creativity is always kind of coming from a source that's outside of us, right? That we're always channeling something when we are engaging in creative acts. And I think this is so relevant to Saturn in Pisces, because Saturn in Pisces is helping us understand that there's this greater field, right, outside of us that we can connect to in order to draw inspirations from, in order to create new ideas or new projects, right? And sometimes the way we talk about these projects, sometimes the way that we talk about our dreams, our creative endeavors are not actually supportive in reinforcing within our psyche that these dreams are already real, because in some ways they already exist within us, right? And then with Mercury creating a sextile to Mars in Cancer, the contemplation that you can kind of consider is how are your words helping you honor your emotional reactions, abilities to guide your path? What are the roles of your emotional reactions, right, or your emotional reactivity to guiding you, to redirecting you in your path, right? How are your mental patterns kind of keeping you stuck in the same emotional loop? Or how are they moving the plot along, right? Something that we hear a lot in spiritual circles is this idea that words are spells, right? That our words create realities, and that our words are kind of ingredients upon which realities are built. And so it's important not only to understand the impact of our words internally and externally, but also to consider what's behind the words, right? What are the potential that those words hold? And it's also important to note that language is often code for something else. Buried behind the languages that we speak are often ways of thinking, ways of seeing ourselves and the world, and perhaps most importantly, our beliefs around what is possible, right? What realities await us and await the world around us. So here is a transit sensitive suggestion for how to work with this specifically. Notice the ways that your body or that your being communicates that are not verbal. At least here in the US, we live in a highly verbal culture. But our bodies and our environments also speak words, also communicate, although perhaps not in necessarily human language, right? While Mercury in Scorpio, which is the opposite placement of Mercury in Taurus, may be more interested in diving deep into the psychologies, into the hidden meanings of our words and our communications, Mercury in Taurus is about giving ourselves permission to be sensitive, to be aware of what's already there, right? What's lying right there on the surface. Perhaps something that's so obvious that we almost don't pay attention to it. If Scorpio is about depth consciousness, Taurus is about surface consciousness, right? Sometimes we get so busy trying to decipher, trying to unearth what is hidden, and looking at what's beneath the surface that we miss the really obvious, right? The thing that's unmistakably there. Mercury in Taurus is really an invitation to read the languages of our bodies, our tone of speech, our posture, and to understand that our bodies impact what's going on within, and what's going on within impacts our bodies, right? It's a two-way street. And so what happens in your body when you consider the idea of dreams and aspirations, right? Where are you feeling the tightness, if at all? Where are you feeling neutrality or even some spacious curiosity? Similarly, what is happening in your body when you consider the idea of emotions, of your emotional body, of your emotional reactions? Where are you perhaps feeling any contraction? Where are you feeling some sort of relief? So something that I also notice when doing an exercise like this one is that it may bring us closer to also contemplating the relationship between our minds and our bodies. Where have you been taught that you need to prioritize the construction, right? That comes from your conceptual cognitive mind over the experience of your soft animal body, right? And it's interesting because I also want to emphasize in this question here the difference between how our minds construct things and how our bodies experience things, right? And I also want to be clear that this is kind of a non-dual experience, right? This is not about creating any sort of moral judgment towards the conceptual mind or the cognitive brain. And this is not about glorifying the body, right? But it is about more deeply understanding the connection between the two. Mercury in astrology is known for not really choosing sides. Mercury can either play for the day team or the night team, right? Mercury is neither a benefic nor a malefic. And so similarly, I think mercurial contemplations are really not about choosing sides. Rather, it's about getting curious about the connections, right? And getting curious about the separations between the mind and the body. I think it's important to recognize that for as long as we live on this earth, survival is kind of a primary instinct for, if not all, then many humans. We absolutely need our brains to jump in and to help us from time to time. So there's nothing wrong with using the mind. And also, speaking for myself, I am way more accustomed to communicating with my brain, to pick up the signals of my cognitive function and then to interpret it into some sort of meaning or some sort of direction that our life is supposed to go towards, that I find it really helpful to focus on my body sometimes, or to at least bring my body into consideration, into communication, because I tend to be less fluent in the languages of the body. So to that end, I have a couple suggestions for working with this coming week, which hopefully is serving as an inspiration for your own process too. The first one is to write a letter, maybe a love letter to your body. And this can take whatever shape that you want it to, right? It can be a 5-line poem, it can be a haiku, it can be a dance, it can be a song, it can be a series of experimental moves that reflect, or even like a very mutable exercise, right? That can reflect where you are with your body right now, where your body is at. It can be serving as a reflection of your lived experience at this moment. And I would love to share mine with you in the hopes that maybe you will be more inspired to engage in this exercise if you hear about what I came up with. So here it is. It's called A Love Letter to the Body. My body carries grief in mysterious, unexpected ways. It buries tears under my laughter. She adds colors and tones to the memories that she remembers. He sighs when I've been holding my breath in a blanket of general anxiety. They know when to dissociate when the world is too overwhelming, when to sleep when they're too exhausted. My body knows that the experience of grief is too large to hold alone. After all, my body is just a pile of meat, bones, and organs held together and animated by some numinous, mysterious force. Probably the same kind of force that gives the trees, the rocks, and the rivers their silence, their movements, their sighs. And yet my body knows how to be connected, even when words fail me, especially when words fail me. Even when my cognition is seemingly unable to hold the wild force of sadness, of passion, of fear, of joy. My body finds ways to let the water flow. The water may not look like tears, but have you ever asked your sweat if they too are able to carry grief? The water may not look like release, but have you ever asked your saliva if they too are coated with pent-up frustration, with sweet questions, with gentle curiosities? Like rain, our sweat drips, and in its release, they save us from the despair of aliveness. Like the lake, our womb waters pool, and in their accumulation connects us to the tension of the glorious entrapment of our skins and confusing interconnection of the subtle glow of our existence with everything else. I, or at least the version of me that I've been taught is legitimate, that I've been taught is productive, that I've been taught is legible, may not acknowledge the importance of my own experiences. Sometimes I have no idea if I make sense to others. Sometimes I'm sure I don't want others to know me at all. Sometimes I don't even want to be known to myself. But even in those moments, my body is with me. The irregular, rhythmic thumps of my heartbeat. The eyes lubricating themselves without my conscious intervention. The fingers perspiring and twitching at the signs of growing discomfort. The hairs making silent promises to adorn me, to regulate me, to cover me. My body is love in human form, the kind of love that embraces chaos, lust, anger, joy, contentment, envy, confusion, nothingness. My body is a wonderland for many different reasons, but primarily for me, because my body is mine. Another resource that I think can be interesting for you to consider with Mercury being in Taurus is a conversation that I recently recorded with Madison Nees, my friend and teacher on Nick Kepley's podcast, In Search of Tarot. It's a conversation that feels pretty raw and wild and alive to me. And we considered the idea of the body as a site of divination in that conversation. And so, yeah, that's something that I will recommend to you in case you would enjoy listening to that. And finally, I also want to mention the work of La, who is at Blue Creative on Instagram. They're a friend, someone who is dearly beloved in my community, and also a participant in Astrology as Praxis, which is the year-long astrology container I'm currently facilitating with Britain. La recently gave me a reading of my birth chart that really helped me deepen into the gift of Mercury in Taurus. So I want to express my gratitude for the ways that La has inspired this contemplation for Mercury in Taurus for me. And I believe that La also has their Mercury in Taurus natally. So I encourage you to check out their work. I will link it on the show notes in case you want to connect with them. All right, that is it by way of contemplation for this coming week. I hope that you found something here for you. I hope that this has been helpful for you to feel into what the coming week is bringing. And yeah, just a reminder that for April, I have a couple spots available for readings. So if any of you are interested in processing anything that's coming up, or that you feel like a reading might be resonant or maybe helpful for you at this time, I would absolutely love to connect with you. You can find all the links to connect with me below. And also, if you found this contemplation or the episodes that I share in this podcast to be helpful to you, I would love to receive a review from you. I believe that the only podcast that can do that right now is Apple Podcasts. So I would love to receive some of your feedback. 4 to 5 sentences is enough, and they really help others find this podcast as well. And if anyone you know might really benefit from these contemplations, I would love for you to share this with them. And that's why I'm sharing it as a podcast, because that is one of the most accessible ways of getting this work out there that I can think of. And I would love to receive your help in sharing this with others that you feel might benefit from it too. Thank you so much for sitting here with me, for spending this time with yourself and with the energy of the coming week. I am so grateful for your time, for your trust in engaging with this work together with me. And I hope that you have a beautiful week, and I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for listening.